My name is William Roberts. Mr. Mayor, members of council, and all of you friends and visitors and guests to Whistler. What a week, what a time. My goodness, the Olympics are finally here and we're basking in it all. I do recall, though, a very famous Canadian, some of you might have heard of Jean Vanier, who once said, you know, you can always tell the health of a community by the way in which it welcomes strangers and newcomers and outsiders. So I'm hoping that you see and realize and experience the health that we have here in Whistler, because as a healthy, sustainable community, one thing we want to do is to welcome you and to have you be not only welcome here, but to take that sense of hospitality, peace back to your own communities. So the email came a couple of weeks ago from Che Ying, where are you, who said, William, we'd like you to talk about your vision about what travel and tourism would look like in a sustainable but also peaceful world. How would you see travel tourism promoting peace in the world? Feel free to inject a few anecdotes from your past experience, but keep in mind we're looking for inspiring visions of what place tourism has in a sustainable and peaceful world, and could you do that in 3 minutes? So here we go. And part of me thinking about this, and I appreciate Che Ying asking me, because just 2 weeks ago I returned from my first ever visit to the Middle East. With stops in Istanbul, Cairo, Amman, Jordan, Jerusalem, and Bethlehem in the West Bank. It was a fascinating trip for a first-timer to look at both the travel and tourism aspects of the Middle East. Made all the more memorable because my tour guide was my 21-year-old son, who is at the American University in Cairo studying Islamic history, culture, politics. And so we had many discussions as he took me for the first time, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but into a mosque. And then we went to several mosques. And we had all these discussions about Islam and the Arab world and the role of women and NATO in Afghanistan and the banning of minarets in Switzerland and the calls to prayer 5 times a day and the whole Arab and Islamic world. And as we talked about this, I'll never forget his sage advice at one point at the age of 21. My tour guide son said, well, Dad, you know, I think we'd all be a lot better off in the world if there was just a lot more empathy. And I thought, well, how true. And to hear this from my own son was a proud moment, though I began to think how hard it would be to imagine, you know, ads for empathy tourism in the New York Times or the Globe and Mail travel section. I did say to him, well, there's a great book, Jeremy Rifkin, some of you might know him. Lots of ideas were spreading from his new book called The Empathic Civilization. It's newly out. But then one night in Cairo, he said to me, Dad, and this is a matter of utter trust, he said, Dad, and he really tested my empathy, I'd like you to meet a friend of mine. His name is Syed. He's 32 years old, and he's a member of the Taliban. He grew up in a Pashtun family in Afghanistan, then went in a refugee camp in Pakistan. He's now at the American University in Cairo, is one of my son's best friends. So I said, all right, let's talk with the Taliban. And so there I was on the banks of the Nile in Cairo with this 32-year-old Pashtun Taliban, unbelievably bright guy, talking about his history, what he's been through, what he now sees as what's going on in Afghanistan, the utter, in his view, negative role of Canada, but his hope for the future for his homeland. I covet for all of you, for peace in the world, that you would be able to spend, like I did, 2 or 3 hours talking with the Taliban, or a young Taliban member like Syed. So then as I returned home from all these experiences, and I saw the debate about the luxury cruise liner docked off Port-au-Prince, tourists sipping cocktails while people of Haiti slipped into chaos of a shuttered, crumbled economy, and then to get Che Ying's email, I began to think at this Whistler Olympic TEDx event about this role of tourism in promoting peace and sustainability, but it's hard sometimes not to think skeptically about this industry of travel in a world with ever-widening gaps of resources, ever-widening gaps of understanding or misunderstanding. But then I thought, no, thanks for the email, all the more reason for us to collectively be engaged in harnessing what I think is this vastly underused potential of tourism as a catalyst for peace and sustainability in the world that we all want, not just for ourselves, but for my son, our sons, and our daughters. So part of my vision, Che-Ying, is that the future is that in the travel and tourism business, more young people take leadership and take it over. Because I understand that young people already account for close to a quarter of all travelers in the world. And they go to hostels and they hang out and they live cheaply and they move around. And my understanding is that, that they already have a curiosity and an adaptability. And in many ways have a very enlightened self-interest about the world of the future that they will soon inherit. For us, we're soon to be retiring baby boomers. It's good that we are driving new markets in cultural tourism, ecotourism, voluntourism, as we've heard about. I even hear that there's a thing called philanthropic tourism, where rich people go and help to support areas. My own Whistler Forum favorite of educational tourism in China. But then in the Middle East, I heard, and who wouldn't want to go on a tour called the Path of Abraham Tour, with Jews, Christians, and Muslims together going through Syria, Turkey, Israel, and Palestine. Even though we know there are many Christian Zion to Armageddon tours that sell out. It's great to hear of community tourism in Jamaica, biking for AIDS relief in Vietnam, or arranging for Olympic visitors not only to come to the Squamish Little Cultural Center, but to go up to a sweat with the folks in Mount Currie and Lillooet. Some of you may not know that there is an International Institute for Peace through Tourism organization that monitors and promotes all of these creative initiatives and niche markets. Louis D'Amour, based in Vermont, has got this huge group. Just Google it on the Twitter page. It's iip2.org. They even have some evidence that the cumulative impact on the whole industry of the growing numbers of those who take on the credo of the peaceful traveler, that we're almost at a kind of tipping point. Very inspiring, very encouraging, with people of a vision for tourism in a more peaceful world. But we're not there yet, by a long shot. In this bold vision, we need more committed leaders, it seems to me, with the effective tools if tourism is to be part of solving these problems of conflict in the world rather than contributing to them. And my sense is, and my vision is, that these young emerging leaders in tourism need to get more political in the best sense of that word. For it seems to me that domestic governments and nation states, with the possible exception of North Korea, though even they have the New York Philharmonic go and play in North Korea, every government wants to expand the number of visitors, travelers, tourists into its country. As we already heard, tourist dollars are a major source of foreign exchange. I'm not a political scientist, but some might realize that tourism has actually helped to reduce tension between rival nations. Think of China, Taiwan, Israel, Jordan, even the U.S. And Cuba. But this required leadership and vision to realize a more peaceful world with and using tourism, to expand further, not just the commodification of industrial tourism or free trade in cheap deals. The leadership we need are those who can leverage tourism's political clout for these higher ideals of peace through tourism that helps to reduce the gaps and reduce the misunderstandings in the world. We need people like Bruce here be the new Minister of Tourism for British Columbia. We need people like Valerie, who are going to be Ministers of Intergovernmental Affairs. We need people like Wade Davis to come back and be Minister of Foreign Affairs for Canada. We need to invade Afghanistan, Iran, Gaza, Yemen with more travelers, not more troops. And we need the International Institute for Peace through Tourism. We need TEDx. We need the World Economic Forum. And we need the Center for Sustainability in Whistler. And for all of us here together to lead in this very urgent mission. Thank you very much.